This week you will begin working on exercises that include bar chords. I can't overemphasize what a huge move forward this is for you. I've always felt that once a person has learned to play bar chords, they're officially a rock guitarist. When I began taking guitar lessons, you couldn't Google bar chords and learn how to play them. I didn't have any close friends that knew how either, so I was stuck playing open chords, and that is a tough way to play rock songs. I even had a guitar instructor that taught me the basics using the Mel Bay instructional series, and he just flat out told me he was more of a jazz player and didn't play bar chords. To this day, I don't understand how he could play guitar and not play bar chords, regardless of the style of music. Still, that was my experience. 4 or 5 years after beginning to play guitar, I started taking lessons from the top instructor in town, Jeff Thurston. A shout out to one of my first teachers. I quickly learned a trick to pulling off this technique. Still, the point that I want to make here is, after this lesson, if you've never played bar chords before, you'll be closer to being able to play them, but it will take time before you can perform this technique automatically without conscious thought. So, as in all things, be patient. Over time, you will master this technique. Just hang in there. If you're into metal, you'll have fun with the next exercise because this is a technique that is used in many of your favorite songs. Even if you're not a metal fan, you'll find that this is a great finger strengthening exercise. Practice this technique and you'll be playing 6-string bar chords before you know it. And that's the real purpose of this exercise. It is an excellent way to strengthen the first finger bar in preparation for bar chords. In hard rock and metal, the guitar is often tuned lower than standard pitch. This adds low frequencies, creating a very thick, powerful sound. Exercise 1 features a dropped D tuning. All this means is the low E string is tuned to a D note, which is 2 frets lower than E. If you have a tuner, just tune the 6th string to the D below E. Let me make a quick guitar change here and I'll show you what I mean. All right, I've got my trusty Les Paul here. I'm also plugged into a tuner, so I'll be looking over here cheating. There we are. Now the cool thing about dropping the D is you can play a power chord with one finger. At the same time, you're used to thinking this position as being in A. Well, because it's dropped a whole step lower, this is actually a G note. So this is a G power chord. Pretty cool, right? What this is going to do is help you to learn to play your bar. And the bar is played, as I've explained before, with a twisting motion between the thumb and the first finger. You apply leverage with your thumb and first finger to get all the strings to sound. I'm going to play exercise 1 slowly. That way you'll have a better understanding of the technique. Here's the first part that can be thought of as the verse. The next part is a little tricky because of the 16th notes. It will take some practice at a very slow tempo to learn the rhythm. Here's exercise 1 at normal speed. Now, even though with this technique, you're only playing the 6th, 5th, and 4th strings, go on ahead and try to play the rest of the strings, the 3rd, 2nd, and 1st, and see if they're sounding at the bar, because you are trying to learn how to play a bar. Although drop D is a popular tuning, I prefer to teach beginners standard tuning. Maybe that's a conservative approach, but I think it's better to learn how to play using standard techniques, equipment, and tone before experimenting. The reason I'm covering this here is to strengthen your bar. Exercise 2 is the same song as exercise 1, but is in standard tuning. Since exercise 1 includes a low D string that isn't available in standard tuning, there is a slight change to the composition. I'm including this standard tuning version of exercise 1 for your amusement and for you to hopefully gain some understanding of the difference between drop D and standard tuning. The 16th note rhythm in the chorus is too challenging for a beginner, so I don't expect you to play this perfectly. Give it a shot, but you may need to save the chorus section to review after you are more experienced. The verse section shouldn't be a problem. Okay, coming up is the chorus, and you will notice the level of difficulty caused by the 16th note section. Also, the part was revised for standard tuning, and this revision is much more challenging than the original drop D version. Here's the chorus played slowly. Exercise 3 is a simple 1-4-5 progression. What I mean by that is it uses the 1st, 4th, and 5th intervals of the major scale. Here's a brief overview of what I mean by this. Here is the C major scale. You should be familiar with the sound of this scale. It's one of the most common melodies in all of music. When we build chords and scales, they are created by combining scale intervals. The first tone of the major scale is the root. And then instead of the names of the notes, like this is a C and a D, we simply call them the first, the root, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, or octave. It's that simple. We're just numbering the notes of the scale. First, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, octave. A major chord includes the first, third, first, second, third, and fifth tones of a major chord. First, second, third, fourth, fifth. So, first, third, fifth. Every note in this C major chord will be the first, third, and fifth. No other notes. The difference between a major and a minor is the third is the flat third. First, second, third. Minor is kind of evil. Anyway, so the scale formula for, I got sidetracked there thinking about evil. That's a bad thing, I know. Okay, so first, second, third, flat third. Every note in the C minor chord contains only the first, flat third, and fifth of the scale. All chords are derived from formulas similar to this. I'm going through this quickly, I know. You're not expected to memorize what I'm explaining. I just want to give you a very brief overview. We'll go into depth on this subject in the future. As mentioned before, power chords are a fifth type interval. They include the first and fifth tones of the scale. So A, the first, second, third, fourth, fifth. So that should look familiar. That is the A power chord. When you add the fourth string, all you're doing is you're adding another A. It still only has two notes in it. That's why it's an interval. Intervals are two notes. Chords are three or more notes. If you're playing a G power chord, fifth type interval, first, second, third, fourth, fifth. First, fifth. It's that simple. Exercise 3 includes one of the most common chord progressions in all of rock. Hundreds of songs are based on these simple chord changes. Might have heard that before. So it just shows you that even though it's the same chord progression, the songs don't sound the same because of the rhythmic changes with these chords. Decided I needed a close-up for this one, so please excuse my friend, the camera. This first chord is E. I explained this chord briefly last week. It's the same as A minor, just played on a lower set of strings. So there it is, E major. So you've got that one down. You learned A minor, you know E major. Here's an open A chord, the second chord in exercise 3, and it's played like this. Now even though you can't see it here, the first string is open. And that's kind of difficult. You gotta really be careful with this finger right here that it's attacking the strings straight on, not like this. and that will leave you space to allow the first string to sound. While you're learning this chord, there's a good chance that the first string is not going to sound. You will be deadening it slightly with this third finger. That's okay, it will sound like this. Still, it's an A chord, it's just missing the second E in the chord. The third chord is difficult. You're not expected to play this one perfect before moving on to the next lesson. You'll master this over time. If you have never played this one before and you can play this clearly over the next week, you're a musical genius. Okay, that may be an exaggeration, but I still find you to be very impressive. This chord uses a 5-string bar, and it's played like this. Okay, I play it with a second bar added right here. An easier way for a beginner to play it is like this. I hardly ever play it like that, but you have your choice. You could do it either this way. And remember, the first string has to sound at the bar, or you can play it this way. And that's really tough to get it to sound from the bar. What's going to probably happen, because you have to bend this finger just a little bit to lift it up just enough so it's able to be pressing on the second string, but it's lifted enough to let it sound from the bar on the first string, okay? So that's tough. You will probably start off by playing it like this. The problem is it's really harder even for me to do a quick change using that fingering, whereas I could do this and very quickly use the more difficult voicing of the chord. Actually, the voicing is the same, the fingering is not. What's cool is you put different shapes in front of this bar to make it a minor 7th, a 7th, you already know, C, the major chord. So it's very cool. You learn this one shape, do a little alterations to it, and move it up and down the neck, and you've got hundreds of chords. In the third generation of the Complete Basic course, I didn't teach this chord until the intermediate level because it is difficult. But just like I showed you the basics of 6-string bar chords earlier in the course, why not get started with this right now? Play around with it, and you will be able to do it eventually. Probably not this week, but then again, you might be able to. The double bar, as I said, is optional. The fingering designated in the tab shows the notes in front of the bar, as I explained earlier. This is the easiest way to fret it. Okay, so let's do exercise 3. If you're trying to learn these bar chords on an acoustic guitar, it will make this much more difficult because an acoustic guitar is usually more difficult to play, the strings are thicker, and more difficult to press to the fretboard. Once bar chords are mastered though, you're an intermediate guitarist and you can play just about any song, so there is a prize at the end of this journey. At first, this chord will be little more than a power chord. That's okay though, because you've got all the strings fretted properly. So if you happen to, instead of playing the 5th, 4th, and 3rd string, happen to accidentally play the 2nd string when you're playing a power chord, the note is the correct note to play. At the same time, because it's more difficult, especially when you're using the second bar like I'm doing right now, to hold down the second string. It's probably going to be muted like that. That's okay, because it's not supposed to sound in the power chord anyway. So initially you're going to find with this particular chord, the third and second strings are going to be muted because you can't actually play this correctly yet. And the first string will be muted. That's okay. The chord will still sound roughly correct, not perfect. You won't have all 5 strings, but you'll at least have this much of it. And it will work in the song, and nobody will know the difference actually, because most rock guitar is played with the 5th, 4th, and 3rd strings, or the 6th, 5th, and 4th strings power chords. So be patient with this one. It could take a while before you've got it down. As I've explained many times, be patient. So anyway, move on to next week's lesson, even though this one may be less than perfect. Exercise 4 includes the D chord that you've already learned and a couple of suspended chords that are easier to play than the name implies. I mean, suspended, that sounds like a little more difficult. Actually, they're easier to play. There are hundreds of songs that use the technique that I'm going to show you in exercise 4 when playing a D chord. You'll notice when you're playing this one that all you're doing is moving the notes up on the first string. You're playing this. 2nd fret, 3rd fret, along with the D chord. So watch. Really not that hard. At the same time, to get all this stuff to sound cleanly will be difficult. The name of these D chords isn't important. To tell you the truth, I didn't remember that the chord voicing with the open E is a sus2 until I looked it up. So that shows you how I play these chords. I just play them. You could do that without actually knowing the names of the chords. I simply picture this as the same chord, but the note on the first string changes. This is a very important lesson. You must find time to practice an hour a day, at least 5 days a week, as I've explained many times. If it hasn't become a habit, do everything that you can to make it a habit. Moving forward is difficult when practice is sporadic. Too often it's 1 step forward, 2 steps back. You must be consistent. If this lesson takes a little longer than a week to accomplish, that's okay. Still, do not expect perfection. Review this lesson in the future. You'll find that as you move forward, your technique will improve, and it will be evident when you return to previous lessons like this. See you next week.